Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As you're entering our live session, just a couple of housekeeping. We will have Q&A at the end of today, so I encourage you to please put questions into the Q&A box or in the chat box. Either is fine. We'll be monitoring both through the session today. So I'd like to welcome you to discuss the proven process to increase gender diversity. My name is Gemma Lloyd, and I'm welcomed here with Valeria Ignatova, and we're the co-founders of Work 180. We started Work 180 9.5 years ago now, and back then we used to do a lot of webinars together, not so much anymore. So today I'm very grateful and very excited. But we both wanted to be here today because of how important the proven process is to drive results for your organisation in terms of increasing gender diversity. And it came about from studying our most successful employers that we work with and the process that they go through to achieve their results. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we gather today. I'm on the Turrbal and Yuggera people's land, and we recognise their continuing contribution to land, waters and culture, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. We're all joining from various locations today, and so I encourage you all to take a moment and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that you are on and share today in our chat box. The agenda, I'm going to share a little bit about Work 180. Most of the people on this call today are from our endorsed employers, some aren't. Then we're going to start off setting the context and really looking at that data. We'll then go into the importance of having a management system so that you can track the proven process. Then we're going to talk about aligning your offering with what women want, amplifying your offering. Then Valeria is going to take us through a case study, so a real life example of the proven process with Softcat and the effectiveness of that proven process for them. We'll touch on some new things with Work 180, and then we'll go into the question and answer. And as I mentioned before, please put those questions into the chat box. So Work 180, our mission is to give every woman the power of informed choice when making their career decisions. And we do that through shining a spotlight on workplace policies and benefits and initiatives so that women can choose where they work and what aligns with their values and what they need. And we also provide solutions to help you as employers make sure that you're on this journey of continuous improvement. And the endorsement is a great sign of trust for women in the workplace. So I'll go into some more of this later, but we work with employers across 35 different industries. And the key takeaway from the proven process is that it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It doesn't matter the size of business that you're in. It's effective for you. So what does it mean to be an endorsed employer? Well, first of all, it means that you've met a minimum set of standards. And so congratulations to all of the endorsed employers on the call today that have met those minimum standards, because 40% of employers that apply to be endorsed by Work 180 do not meet those standards. It's really staggering to me how many organisations still don't have what we class as the minimum levels of support there. Secondly, being an endorsed employer means that you're committed to being transparent with your policies and your benefits. And last but not least, it means that you're committed to this journey of continuous improvement. No employer is perfect, but it is about making that progress. And in an industry defined by good intentions, Work 180 drives measurable, actionable change. This is why the proven process is so effective. And I think, unfortunately, DEI has been tarred with somewhat of a fluffy brush over the years. And it's really important that we use metrics and we use data to show success, because that's what's going to convince many executives to make sure that they're coming along on this journey. Okay, so let's get into the data. Now, there's a lot going on in this slide, so I'm just going to point out a couple of examples. Let's have a look at IT that you can see here. Now, since 2020, the average increase of women per employer in the IT sector is 0.5%. It has barely moved per employer. If we look at other sectors like professional, scientific, and technical services, the sad reality of that sector, which includes things like engineering, is it's actually dropped by 1% since 2020. Now, the good news is that through the proven process and what we see as best practice is that employers are increasing their representation with Work 180. So in IT, it's up to 6%, in professional, scientific and technical services, up to 7% year on year. However, what I always talk about is, let's be real here, robbing Peter to pay Paul. These industry representation numbers aren't increasing on an industry-wide level fast enough for every organisation to meet that number. The thing is, though, there's a lot of women working at organisations that do not have a commitment to gender equity, that are not trying to progress. And what we aim to do is make sure that every woman can find you guys, or you folks, sorry, that are making the difference and are on this journey of continuous improvement. The underlying causes of gender equality in the workplace are a lot. The tip of the iceberg might be we're not receiving enough applications from women. However, there's a lot of things that contribute to our abilities to reach gender equity, such as flexible working arrangements, training and awareness at leadership level around what needs to be done, sexual harassment, bias in the recruitment process. And the good thing about the proven process and the way that it's structured is it is structured to make sure that these root causes are addressed, which I'll touch on in just a second. Some of you might have attended the webinar that Duncan Hewitt ran recently. He's the author of Accelerating Women. Something really stood out to me in that webinar, one particular sentence that he said: progressing gender equity is a strategy, it's not a project. So in terms of trying to achieve your gender equity goals, it's not enough to just assign a couple of people to run a project. It must be embedded within the business every day and looked at as something long-term and done in a sustainable way. So here's some of the root causes that we address through the proven process. We need to look at why women might not be interested in you as an employer, which comes down to the employer branding. Why women might not be applying for the jobs, the talent acquisition. Why then they might not be accepting the offer, talent acquisition. And then more importantly, why they might not be thriving in the workplace. And so to make sure that all of these root causes are being addressed, it's super important that talent acquisition, whoever manages branding, sometimes, of course, it's the same group of people and culture teams, and the executives are all on board this journey and doing their part to progress gender equity. Now we're going to talk about, that's the data and setting the context, and now we're going to talk about the importance of a management system. So DEI and gender equity, they need to be treated as any other business objective. And so what that means is, number one, metrics are driven with clear outcomes defined. So instead of saying we want to progress gender equity, what does progress actually mean for you? And having something really tangible in place that when you get to that, you can say, great, we're achieving what we set out to achieve. Secondly is measuring and tracking on a regular cadence. Just like any other business metric, I mean, these are sales metrics, for example, they're tracked weekly. So gender equity, it needs to be tracked on a regular cadence. And last but not least, it needs to have an executive sponsor and resourced effectively to achieve your targeted outcome, just like any other business objective. So I'm delighted now to hand you over to Valeria, who's going to take us through the management system.
Thank you, Gemma, and welcome everyone. Some of you might have already been familiar with this slide here, but essentially, if we start at the left, we can see the current state of play. So the percentage of women overall, where they sit in terms of leadership as well. And then moving to the middle, we're looking at metrics that are related to attraction, retention, and promotion. At the bottom, we can set targets as well to progress against those. And what we actually have noticed among some of our more progressive employers is that they're moving towards a framework of a target of 40-40-20. So 40% women, 40% male, and 20% of any gender. And setting those targets is really important, because then once we identify the initiatives that we need to execute on to move the dial on those targets, we can track that progress on a quarterly basis. Sometimes those numbers don't move as quickly as every quarter, and that's okay. Progress over perfection is one of our favorite sayings at Work 180 that you may have also heard. So essentially, all the work that we do there is designed to move the dial on the right-hand side. Now, what's really interesting about this particular dashboard is that this is a real-life example, and the organization that is part of this dashboard has a target, or I should say had a target, to increase women to 25% from 20% by next year. Now, I say had a target because they are revisiting that target at the moment. And the reason they're doing that is because when you have a look at that net retention number, it's quite significant. And I have to say, when we first presented this, it was mostly talent acquisition in the room. And I feel like they were nearly, crying at the results, because the realization was that, they've implemented great processes within their talent acquisition space. They worked hard on employer branding. They attracted 63 women, but in the same time period, the business had lost 58 women. So as I mentioned, they're revisiting that target. They're also getting other stakeholders involved to make sure we're focusing on that retention piece, because otherwise that target simply, it's not feasible to hit that by next year. And if we could move perfect to the next slide. So this is a scorecard that we use to start the conversation around what are the root causes that we need to address in order to shift that dial. And what I'd like to do is I'll share just one kind of common goal per each focus areas that employers are choosing, just to give you an idea and bring this whole scorecard to life. So looking at retention, one of the first questions that we like to ask at this point is, how happy are you with your exit interview process? Now, I've probably had close to 100 of these conversations, and sadly, realistically, only a handful of employers were able to share a best practice process for this section. And what I mean by that is, not only are they doing exit interviews, they're also doing stay interviews. They're looking at staying in touch with new members of the team when they start, having focus groups, really making sure they're very thoughtful and intentional about the kind of data that they gather, how they collect that data, who has access to that data, who is looking after that project, and what is done with that data as well. So more often than not, our first goal in this space might be to understand the top 3 reasons women may be leaving the business. With the talent acquisition pillars, I've seen a lot of big wins when people choose to focus on that third metric there, which is the job apply conversion rate. Now, that apply conversion rate is generated from somebody looking at your job ad on the Work 180 platform to choosing to click apply. The average at the moment is about 7.5%. And I can also say with confidence that everyone has an opportunity to improve the job ad. There's lots and lots of opportunities there. So when we have seen companies focus on that metric, work really hard to improve that job ad, I've seen that conversion rate go from below average to as high as 23%. So a huge jump. And it's really important to also mention that that jump is not just on the Work 180 platform, it's a halo effect. So if you update your job ads, that will filter through to anywhere else you might advertise. So, Seek, LinkedIn, and Indeed. That conversion from women will increase wherever they come across your job ad. So that's a very popular first step that employers might focus on in the TA section. And last but not least, employer branding. So lots to do there. A very common measure of success, so probably the gold standard, I would say, is to track your percentage of women applicants overall. And some people still don't do that, and that's okay. One of the goals that we might be able to set in the initial stages is to help you track that number. if you are tracking that number, all the employer branding initiatives that we do together, that we also help you with leveraging the accreditation badge across all different channels, it's the same halo effect. So that percentage of women applicants is women applying from all different areas, and that's how we can measure the success of your employer brand. And, you know, as Gemma mentioned, we work with many different industries. All of them are male dominated. They have got a big presence in the market as a, you know, a consumer recognition, but do people know about the great things they have to offer women? No. In most cases, it's the best kept secret, and we don't want it to be. We want it for everyone to realize what you have to offer, because you've worked so hard to introduce these policies.
And Valeria, one of the questions I often get when we go through this dashboard is, why is the Work 180 employer page returning users statistic so important?
That's a really interesting one to keep an eye on, because, you know, when I think of our community, it's made up of professional women, discerning women, women that, for lack of a better word, don't want to settle just for any employer, nor should they. There's a lot of transparency now. So having a healthy metric in that space indicates that they're interested in you as an employer, they're coming back, they're doing their research. It's also a strong indicator of future applications.
Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about aligning your employee offering with what women want. Hopefully, most of you have had the opportunity to download and read our What Women Want report. It's our annual survey that we do. If you haven't had that opportunity, I highly recommend it, and we can also get that sent out to you as well. Now, our approach to making sure that women are thriving in the workplace is to do an assessment across these 10 standards that drive equity. So it's everything from your inclusive hiring process to your flexible work arrangements, shared caring responsibilities, career development, etc. Now, when we go through this assessment, you get scored overall, and then you get scored for each specific area, which is then turned into an action plan for improvement. And it's certainly not about doing everything at once, but it is about taking the steps to do what's feasible for your workplace and continue on that journey of continuous improvement. And what we're seeing is employers really leverage this score to show to their employees all the great things that they're doing to work hard for you, because, you know, of course, many women care about more women being brought into the business, but also the women that you have in the business, what they really care for is how are you as an organization getting better and better and better to make sure that I have equitable opportunities here. And to round all of this out, it's great to be doing all of these amazing things, and we have to be talking about it. So I'm really excited and super proud to say that in the last 12 months, 1.5 million women have used the platform to choose their next employer. So there's this real awareness growing and growing and growing around employers that are willing to be transparent around their benefits, and the employers that have this genuine commitment around continuous improvement. In terms of that brand recognition and talking about the good things that you're doing as an employer, it's also important to do that internally. And what our What Women Want report showed is that 75% of respondents who revealed they work for an endorsed employer, so most of you, said they felt proud of their workplace. And for comparison, that dropped to 46% for the respondents who don't work for an endorsed employer. So that commitment that you all have is really demonstrating to your workforce that you're on this journey to support them. And so wrapping all of that up into the proven process before we go into the case study, which Valeria is going to share, we start off understanding what your data is at the high level and deep diving into some of those metrics. From there, we set a goal. It can be an annual goal and then broken down into quarterly goals to set those outcomes that we want to drive. From there, we work through your DEI assessment as well as what's working from a brand and talent attraction perspective. We work on what needs to be fixed and improved. We make progress. We promote that progress internally and externally, increase the representation, and round it goes every quarter. And so that you get this great build of that continuous improvement over time. Valeria, over to you for the case study.
Thanks, Gemma. So Softcat, they are in the tech industry, so very competitive, very male-dominated, as we all know, and they have just over 2,000 employees. Now, they had quite a healthy net retention number of women, so our focus was in employer branding, and their goal was to increase that percentage of women applicants overall. Now, they are very pleased to have grown from 35.3% to 37% of women applicants in 12 months. And the stretch goal now is to get to 40%. So that's what we're working on currently. But here's all the different things that they did in order to get there. So they worked on improving those benefits and initiatives to support women, and they had grown there. So when we look at their DI assessment score, they went up by nearly 6 points. They also scooped up 4 awards at the Equitable Workplace Awards, which was, a huge recognition for them that they embedded in their employee branding practices as well. And they focused on the top of the funnel. So they had created and shared and worked with us on a bunch of content for employer branding, and they measured the employer page views on their profile increasing year on year. So this is their 3rd year with us. So they saw nearly a 31% increase there. They also tried a new tactic, which was to amplify their high priority jobs on social media and really target those job ads. And that increased their job ad views by 256%. And they also really worked hard to embed their accreditation across all different channels. And it wasn't just candidate channels, it was really anywhere internally and externally where they wanted to build that trust with the community and raise that awareness. And as some of you might already be aware, we have a system for measuring your badge utilization and the impact that it's having. And the minimum recommended score is 70. So they went from 0 to 95 with their badge utilization score. And last but not least, they also increased their returnship. So they were also tracking what percentage of people that are reviewing their profile are coming back, and they reached 31%.
Great, thank you, Valeria. And I also just wanted to note, because you mentioned Softcat's applications went up to 37%, and Softcat are in the tech industry. The stats vary between 32 and 35% of representation of women in tech. So now they're at a point where they're actually getting their unfair share of the market, which I love because they're really committed to this journey. Now, all of this information and the process is in the Proven Process brochure, and you will be receiving a copy of the brochure and the webinar. So now we're just going to touch on what's new on the platform before we go into question and answer. So firstly, we have created a new search experience for our community. So everything that Work 180 does, why we're here is for women, to support that community, to help them find workplaces that work for them. And so what we've done is introduce this new employer search functionality so that they can really find employers that match their needs and what they want at this point in time. So that could be their flexible work options or paid parental leave, women in leadership, and different things are important to different people. And this is a snapshot. And the other great thing about this feature is that you can segment it by company size as well. So, for some women, they might prefer a smaller organization, some are larger. So everything's based on company size as well as industry and benefits. What was really interesting when we're doing our community research and we're speaking to women that, aren't in HR or DEI is there's a lot of people out there that have worked at organizations that don't have very good benefits, or even met our minimum standards, that don't know what's out there and available to them. So what we did was we created a customized experience where they could find benefits that will match their life stage without using that HR jargon. And this has been really effective to highlight to women who might not have experienced great benefits before that there's better out there for you. So I'm really, really excited about that. You'll love this one as an endorsed employer. There's also on the job ads, they've all been updated. So on the job ad itself, we now highlight your benefits as well as about you and any stories that we've written about the team that you have at your workplace. And what this means is that all the research can be done on the job ad. They don't need to go off, it's all there, and that has encouraged an increase job view to apply conversion rate. And I will just touch on as well that we include employee testimonials on the job ads. And if you don't have a testimonial, it's really easy to jump into your employer portal and add a testimonial that's going to appear on your job ads. And last but not least is our DEI consulting services. So this has always been part of Work 180 in some form, but what we've done is we've now created a new arm, and where we're really doubling down on that additional support that employers are requesting of us. So workshops, policy reviews and developments, training, benchmarking and analysis, and other consulting requirements. Every package that you have has access to the specialist consultant, and of course you get your dedicated account manager as well. So please feel free to reach out if you want to learn more about this. I'm sure most of you have experienced it in some nature already. So that's us for now before we go into question and answer. So if you have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box or the chat box, and hopefully we've shared some new information about that proven process for you today. Okay, I'm just having a look through. Yes, everyone, we can send Valeria's put the What Women Want report into the chat. So thanks, Valeria, and everyone can download it from there. And there was a great point there that the audience is converted. I appreciate that comment so much. And some of you may not have heard yet, but for International Women's Day event next year, we have a target of 40% male representation in that room. So we've also got a bigger venue at the Melbourne Convention Centre, and that's because we want you to come along, and we also want the men in your company to come along.
Just wanted to add, if anyone is interested, if you missed the session with Duncan Hewitt, we do have a recording to share with the males within your organization, because this could be a male to male kind of conversation. So do let us know if you'd like a recording of that session. It was people commented that it was one of the best sessions they've been to. So yeah, Sam, I agree with you. We're preaching to the converted most of the time, but that's why we need men in those conversations. Yeah, I'll grab the people's names that are requesting that recording so that we can send that out to you.
So Valeria, I've got a question for you, maybe two questions for you that have come through on the chat. One guest is interested to understand how to capture gender data, because they are finding that people are not identifying in the application process, so struggling to capture that information. What would you recommend?
Yeah, so that is something that often is something that our customers work with the DI advisors on. So they have a look at the way that you're asking the questions, what types of questions you're asking, and also how you're positioning that question. So I'd probably recommend a review of what you currently have, and then they'll be able to provide any recommendations that might increase the response rates, because it is a sensitive question. So there's ways to approach that we can support you with.
We have another question as well around navigating discussions regarding DEI being under threat, i.e. Elon Musk, and the reduction in DEI, or reversal, should say, of DEI funding and reversal of DEI policies. Great question. And we are based in 3 locations, and unfortunately, very sadly, we're seeing that impact the US. And the people that we're working with, our people and culture partners and our DEI partners, are under significant amounts of stress at the moment, because they're obviously very passionate about what we do. But where this is coming from is, you know, people who own the company, for example, or, you know, that executive team. The good news is in Australia, we're not seeing it impact us here that much. And I think the majority of people understand that the US has a very polarizing narrative around DEI. However, if people are drinking the US Kool-Aid and start having that polarizing narrative. We always try to lead with empathy and really understand, where is this coming from? Why do you have that fear? And work with them to overcome that, rather than saying you're wrong, you're bad. And we find that approach of bringing them along the journey is helpful. There's also a session that can be run. It's called You Can't Ask That. Get all the people that don't believe in it in a room in the organization, shut the door, shut the blinds. Hey, let's be honest, get it all out on the table and have a conversation with them, leading with empathy to bring them on the journey. All right, we have another question here, similar to the question regarding equity, diversity, and inclusion data. Do you have any supporting resources to encourage the workforce to input their EDI data? For example, what has worked well in other organizations and what are the pitfalls? I don't believe we have a specific resource on that, but we certainly have the knowledge and information, so that should be something we put together. Thank you. Okay, I think we might be through all of our questions. We can just give it a minute here, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you all.
I spotted a question about advertising in New Zealand. That's absolutely available. So please have a chat to your account manager and we can absolutely set that up for you.
Yeah. And Dee, I completely agree that those closed curtain conversations need to be facilitated very, very carefully.
I think the audience would definitely benefit from our latest survey is all about getting men's take on gender equity in the workplace. And I believe that that's just closed. We have over 1,000 responses. And I think what I've seen so far is one of the top concerns is we don't know what to say, how to say it, when to say it. And one of the things the men are asking for is for the employers to facilitate those safe conversations. So we'll be able to provide a lot of data and recommendations once we pull together those results. So that will be available just like the What Women Want report. So I think the timing for that is perfect right now.
Great. Thank you, Valeria. Well, let's wrap this up there. Thank you all so much for joining us. And also thank you for being Endorsed Employers and your contribution to creating a more inclusive future. Everything's going to be sent out to you after, and we've got great idea for excellent content around the data collection. So thank you for that, and wishing you all a great rest of your day.